A great city said to be made of glass, ruined buildings composed of coral, an ancient order of knowledge and power, an island filled with many a flower, 14 islands of different styles, the Ultimate province of the Summerset Isles. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the series in which I count down my top 5 locations for the Elder Scrolls VI. As always, there are 4 criteria used to judge the locations on this countdown, and those criteria are geography, creatures, lore, and quest potential. The topic of today's video is the Summerset Isles, home of the Ultimate and my most desirable location for the Elder Scrolls VI. Let's begin with a discussion of geography. The Summerset Isles is allegedly composed of 14 different islands, each slight variations of the same geographical theme. The 3 most major islands are Auradon, Summerset, and Artaeum. Auradon is the second largest of the islands and located to the northeast. It is known as the crown jewel of the Summerset Isles and is home to some of the friendlier and more outgoing Ultimate. The isle is covered in beautiful trees and plants, taking on a wide variety of colors that ranges from pink to blue to red and more. Combine this with breathtaking seaside scenery and you've got one of the most beautiful locations in Tamriel. Auradon is home to the famous cities of Firsthold, Skywatch, and Volkelgard, all of which are bustling ports that control most of the trade industry within the province. They are well known for their gleaming spires of marble and glass, as well as other beautiful Ultimate architectural traits. Summerset is by far the largest island of the Summerset Isles and makes up most of the Ultimate province. It is said to be green, pleasant, and sunny, filled with farmland, woodland parks, and ancient towers and manors. Alinor, the capital of the Summerset Isles, lies on the western coast of Summerset. It is said to be a city of glass and home to the famous Temple of Ariel. Emissaries of the Revan Empire described it as a straight and glimmering city, a hypnotic swirl of ramparts and impossibly high towers designed to catch the light of the sun and break it into its component colors. Alinor might be one of the greatest visual spectacles in all of Tamriel, and could make for one of the coolest cities we've ever seen. Etten-Nur is the tallest mountain of the Summerset Isles and one of the highest points in all Tamriel. Cloudrest is an ancient city that lies atop Etten-Nur and is a strange mixture of architectural styles. There are buildings made of vines and coral, suggesting previous occupation by the Slode. The Crystal Tower was a mystical structure that was once the pinnacle of learning magic in all Tamriel and was constructed by the Ultimate, who were ancestors of the Ultimate. It was toppled and destroyed by the Daedra during the Oblivion Crisis, but its ruins still exist. The final and smallest of the major islands is Artaeum. It is home to the Psijic Order, an ancient monastic group with great knowledge of ancient magic and mysteries. Its landscape is composed of orchards, pastures, lagoons, misty woodlands, and unique Psijic architecture. Artaeum is notorious for disappearing during certain periods in history, and actually vanished approximately 100 years before the events of Skyrim. But there is a high likelihood it would return for a game set in the Summerset Isles. Silatar is a small artificial island created by an Ultimate girl who later became the Wilder Queen of Valenwood. It is beautiful and yet wrong and unnatural due to its artificial nature. Aranorn Island is a minor isle that once hosted a great academy of the Summerset Isles, but was destroyed by a Slode invasion in the First Era. Little, if any, information is available about the other islands. The main reason why the Summerset Isles has such amazing geography is not only does it have beautiful scenery and breathtaking cities, but there's also a fair amount of variety between the islands. Additionally, as the westernmost province in Tamriel, there are many strange lands that surround the Summerset Isles, some of which may be accessible. For example, Thras, or the Coral Kingdom, is home of the Slodes and located northwest of Summerset. Piandine is an island continent to the south and home of the Sea Elves. Geography is ultimately a matter of personal taste, but in my judgment, the geography of the Summerset Isles is second only in Tamriel to Valenwood. Next up is the creatures of the Summerset Isles, which are equally as interesting as the geography. Eagles are a common sight on the Isles, and are an important symbol for the Altmerry people. The sunbirds of Alinor were once large birds said to be made from Magnus, Nirn's son. Fae, otherwise known as fairy or sprites, are beings that have lived on Tamriel long before recorded history. They were once found on the Summerset Isles in many different variations, but it is implied that most are extinct today. Giatius were a variant of Fae said to be godlike beings who appear as a man or group of men formed from the earth. They were defeated by the Aldmer in ancient times. The Iliadi were a variant of Fae said to be giants taller than trees, but were also defeated by the Aldmer. Historically, the Fae are a very interesting aspect of the Summerset Isles, and while they are thought to no longer be around the province, there may be potential for the return of them in a game set in the Summerset Isles. Goblins can be found on the Summerset Isles, and were once used by the Aldmer as slaves. Trolls can be found as well. Slode are a fat and slug-like race that occupied Somerset in ancient times. They are well known for their mastery of necromancy and biological warfare, and are the most hated race in Tamriel. Judging by their history of invading the Summerset Isles, we could encounter them for a game set in the province. The Maurmer, or Sea Elves, are a race of Mer from the island kingdom of Piandane, far to the south of the Summerset Isles. They invaded the Summerset Isles in year 110 of the Third Era, and could make an appearance for a game set in the province. The most important aspect of the Summerset Isles is their main inhabitants, the Altmer. Through selective reproduction, the Altmer have maintained appearance and physiology that is closest to the Aldmer, the original Mer of Tamriel who came from the mythical continent of Aldmeris. They have incredibly long lifespans and can live up to 1,000 years, though the vast majority only live a couple hundred due to disease or being killed in combat. Their skin is a pale golden hue, and they tend to be tall and slender, with pointy ears and almond-shaped eyes. The Altmer are the most magically inclined of all races in Tamriel, excelling in alteration, illusion, destruction, and mysticism. They tend to be very proud of their lineage, as their name translates to High Ones, or Cultured Ones. But contrary to popular belief, not all of the Altmer are racist. Most are snobbish and proud, but genuine racism is only found in radical factions like the Thalmor. Altmeri religion revolves around worship of 9 Aedra that originally cooperated to create Mundus. Their chief deity is Ariel, the elven representation of Akatosh, and Mara as well as Stendar play important roles in their religion. They follow the teachings of Trinimac, an ancient champion deity of the elves, who is said to have been transformed by Boethia into the Daedric prince Malakath. They revere Magnus, the god of magic, and Finaster, the patron god of the Summerset Isles, who taught them to live longer. Lorcan is the devil figure of the Altmeri religion. As the patron god of man, and primarily responsible for the creation of Mundus, the Altmeri acknowledge his divinity, but view him as a treacherous being. It is noted that worship of certain Daedra is common on the Summerset Isles. After the Oblivion Crisis, certain Daedra such as Maroon's Dagon are despised among the Altmer, but other Daedra such as Meridia are still worshipped. One of the main reasons why Morrowind was so well received is because of the Dunmer's history and magic, peculiar culture, and very interesting religion. The Altmer by far come closest to replicating this, and as a whole, the Summerset Isles may even be capable of surpassing the province of Morrowind. This is one of the biggest reasons why the Summerset Isles is number 1 on this countdown. The next topic of this video is the lore and history behind the Summerset Isles. The original inhabitants of the Isles were the Slode, who at some point either left or were driven away. The Summerset Isles is the first landing place of the Aldmer, the ancestors of most of the elven races of Tamriel. In ancient times, the Aldmer fought and defeated the Fae, leaving most varieties of these creatures extinct. As time passed into the First Era, the Aldmer of Summerset Isles became the Altmer. In year 1301 of the First Era, the Slode invaded Aradon and laid siege to Skywatch. In the middle of battle, a slowed warcaster consumed volatile alchemic substances and ran to the base of the city's great citadel, resulting in a massive explosion that toppled the citadel and allowed the slowed conquest of the city. Luckily, the slowed did not hold the city for long and were quickly driven off. Following their defeat by the Altmer, the slowed engineered a disease known as the Thracian Plague that killed over half the population of Tamriel. In response, the people of Tamriel formed the All-Flags Navy, composed of Redguards, Bretons, Argonians, Altmer, and the Cyrodiilic people, then sailed to Thrace and killed every single slowed they could find, greatly weakening the slug race. From year 2911 to 2917 of the First Era, the Slowed invaded Summerset Isles in yet another brutal war that is remembered for Slowed use of necromancy and infernal machines. The ultimate outcome of this war was Altmer victory. In the middle of the Second Era, the Summerset Isles, Valenwood, and elsewhere united to form the First Aldmeri Dominion in response to news of the Imperial City being taken over by followers of Molag Bal. The government of the First Aldmeri Dominion was called the Thalmor, whom the modern Thalmor traced their roots to. Hundreds of years after the First Dominion disbanded, a power struggle amongst the Bosmer was resolved by the Altmer, resulting in a Second Aldmeri Dominion. Because the Second Dominion was at the time the most stable power in all of Tamriel, Tiber Septim had originally planned to make peace between the Empire and Altmer as opposed to trying to conquer them. But after acquiring an artificial god built by the Dwemer called the Numidium, his plans changed and he used the Colossal Golem to conquer all of the Summerset Isles. These events are remembered by the Altmer with horror and is likely the source of Thalmor hatred for Talos. For thousands of years, the Altmer had believed in their own racial superiority, but after Tiber Septim's conquest of the Summerset Isles, many began to take a more critical view of Altmer society and xenophobia. But others went in the opposite direction and instead called for extremism, the most notable example being the Thalmor. Before the Oblivion Crisis, the Thalmor were nothing more than a fringe group that was mocked by Altmeri society. But slowly they started gaining power by ruining reputations and assassinating those in power. In year 22 of the Fourth Era, the Thalmor staged a coup d'etat and took over the Summerset Isles, marking the beginnings of the Third Aldmeri Dominion. From here, they overthrew the government of Valenwood and gained the favor of Elsewhere, incorporating both provinces into the Dominion. What followed was a great war between the Dominion and Empire, resulting in Aldmeri victory, the outlaw of Talos worship, and the spread of Thalmor influence across Tamriel. After the first war with the Empire, a second great war between the two sides is imminent. The final topic of this video is a discussion of quest potential in the Summerset Isles, which is arguably the best in Tamriel. One potential plot point is the return of the Fae. Little is known about the Fae, and many believe that this return is unlikely, but I believe there is a possibility. Given that certain variants of the Fae are godlike beings, depending on how it's done, this could have main quest potential. Another possibility is the return of the Slowed, which I believe to be a high likelihood for a game set in the Summerset Isles. This wouldn't necessarily have to be a major invasion like in the past, but at the very least I expect them to make some sort of appearance. The Sea Elves of Piandine are another race that could return, given that they invaded the Summerset Isles as recently as the Third Era. The factions of Summerset Isles also have lots of potential. The Psijic Order has long been an important part of Altmeri history, and their return could be a big part of the game. Given the Psijic Order's role in Skyrim and their seeming disapproval of Thalmor policies, I'd be very surprised if they didn't return in some manner along with the island of Artaeum. The Summerset Isles is filled with scholarly institutions and colleges, and these institutions could be joinable as minor factions. Given that Altmeri society is very hierarchical, there could be something similar to the house system of Morrowind. Altmeri religion is very deep, and there are many temples dedicated to various deities across the province, so joining a religious group is another possibility. With regards to magic factions, they would likely be the best in all of Tamriel, rivaled only by those of High Rock. High Elves tend to excel in illusion, meaning illusion-based thief and assassin factions could be present in the Summerset Isles. There are Ayleid ruins in Auradon, ruins of the Crystal Tower in Somerset, and an ancient structure from Aldmer times called Castle Rills. This would give us many opportunities for ruin exploration. Finally, there is major main quest potential in storylines involving the Thalmor. This could be in the form of a second Great War between the Aldmeri Dominion and Empire, and while Valenwood and elsewhere would likely be better settings for this, the Summerset Isles could also work. Another option to consider is there's a big cultural divide within the Summerset Isles, and many Aldmer dislike the Thalmor. So there could be potential for an Aldmeri rebellion against the Thalmor as well. The point here is that the political situation of the Summerset Isles is very complex, resulting in tons of major quest potential. For the final segment of this video, I'd like to discuss the realistic likelihood of the Summerset Isles being chosen for the Elder Scrolls VI. Unfortunately, it's not all that likely in my eyes, simply because there are other settings that work better for the Second Great War, such as Valenwood or elsewhere. It's possible that Bethesda could just skip the Second Great War entirely and have it take place in between the events of the Elder Scrolls V and VI, so I wouldn't say the Summerset Isles is impossible because of this, but I do think that it significantly decreases the likelihood. Another problem with the Summerset Isles is it's a very peculiar place, so a game set in the province wouldn't be as friendly towards newer fans. For all of these reasons, the Summerset Isles is perhaps the best, but also one of the more unlikely choices. The Altmer homeland is, in many ways, a fantasy within a fantasy. As a land of godlike fury and ugly demons load, a place of wars, conflict, and many a violent episode, a home to ancient orders, a nation of rebels and fanatics alike, a province whose grace is almost dreamlike, a gem of Tamriel with origins of antiquity, the Summerset Isles are the very embodiment of beauty.